The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. After the day of the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord, descending from heaven, came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised, as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead, and indeed, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell the disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." The Gospel of the Lord. Well, on Easter, it is customary for us to spend a good bit of time talking about what became of Jesus here and what happened at the resurrection. We've all been raised with those stories from childhood. We want to look at something else today. The first person named in this narrative is Mary Magdalene. Now, the story is terrific. They're going to anoint Jesus' body. They're going to use the myrrh that had come from Nicodemus. 75 pounds of myrrh Nicodemus is said to have provided. Anyway, they were going there, and they are there when the angel descends, and it's like an earthquake, and the stone is rolled away, and the guards who are there they're like the fainting goats. They fall out, terrified. And of course, the angel says to them, "Don't be afraid." It's a common theme. Every time angels appear or the Lord appears to someone, it always has to be prefaced with, "Don't be afraid, focus, listen, don't be afraid, don't panic." And then when Jesus sees them, "Greetings," he says. And he tells them, "Take word to my disciples, tell them what you've seen here, tell them to go to Galilee, go back to where it all began. Go back to where they were first called into ministry. Go back to the place where they can kind of go back to square one and start again." Great stories. But I want to look at Mary Magdalene, as I said. Now, most of you have heard certain stories about Mary Magdalene. And the one thing that you've heard, she was a prostitute. No, she wasn't. Not at all. It won't be for 600 years, 570 years, that she gets stuck with that unfortunate bit of reputation. A lot of people said, well, Magdalene means she's from the city of Magdala. She's Mary the Magdalene. She's from that city. Sounds great, except there was no city, no town called Magdala in the first century in Judea or Galilee. There would later be a city called Magdala, but it was built by the Crusaders. It won't come around for 1,200 years or so. What does that mean then? Mary the Magdalene, Mary of Magdala. Magdala means the tower. The tower. Mary the tower. When I was a student, a graduate student, I had a certain research paper that I had to write. And so I was reading in St. Augustine, and St. Augustine, St. Augustine, refers to Mary Magdalene as apostula apostolarum, the apostle of the apostles. Well, that just hooked me. I went to my professor. I said, Professor Tassell, I want to change my research paper topic. And he says, you've only got 2 weeks left. And I said, I know, but I want to change. And he goes, all right, what do you want to change it to? I said, Mary Magdalene. And he went, apostula apostolarum. He goes, yeah, that hooked me too when I was about your age. And he goes, sure, I won't keep you from that. Well, let me just say that the study of Mary Magdalene has become a lifelong study for me. 40 years I've studied Mary Magdalene. She's a tower. She's not a prostitute. It said that there were 7 demons cast out from her. And a lot of people have tried to theologize what that is. But the truth is that it refers to mental illness. When they talked about someone having 7 demons or 7 devils, they meant this is someone who's really perplexed. Now, we've seen Jesus heal the sick, give sight to the blind, cure the woman with the issue of blood, the lame people, the lepers. All of these people have been healed at the touch of Jesus. Why not mental health also? Why not healing someone of their mental infirmities? That's what Mary Magdalene represents. And then off she goes to preach the gospel. So she's the first one to carry the message of the risen Savior to the other apostles, the other disciples. Sure, it doesn't stop there. After Jesus has ascended, church history tells us, and great legend tells us, that Mary Magdalene, Lazarus, and his sisters Mary of Bethany and Martha all took ship and left. They went to Crete first, where Lazarus remained and would eventually suffer martyrdom there. But Mary Magdalene and the 2 sisters, Martha and Mary of Bethany, continued on, went to the south of France, probably to what today we call the port of Marseille. Mary apparently had gotten, Mary of Bethany, the sister of Lazarus, had gotten sick on the way, and Martha stayed there with her. When Mary passes away, Martha will go to the north of Spain, the south of France, and the north of Italy. And there are churches there, especially a church in Perna, will show this fresco painted on the church wall, this ancient church wall, and it shows Martha laying hands on bishops, baptizing people in those days when women were priests, when women could serve in any role that a man did. What about Mary Magdalene? Mary the Tower travels far and wide. She goes throughout France, at the time called Gaul. She goes into what today we call Denmark, what today we call Germany, spreading the gospel. There have been those who have suggested that Mary Magdalene established over 450 churches. I'm not sure we can ever know what the exact number is, but it's a lot. And the churches in France, you hear a lot of Our Lady of, and it's Notre Dame de Paris, Our Lady of Paris, Notre Dame de Chartres, many other Our Ladies. And you speak to them now, and they will tell you the Our Lady is, of course, the Virgin Mary. That's not what they meant then. Way back when they were referring to the Our Lady, they were referring to Mary Magdalene, the one who had initially established the churches, had helped them to grow. She's the one who is that strong tower. And there's actually other writings from the 1st and 2nd century that talk a lot about Mary Magdalene. One, called the Gospel of Philip, has Simon Peter pretty upset that apparently Jesus has said things to Mary Magdalene that he didn't say to the fellas. And John says, "What is it with you anyway, Peter? You don't like it because the Lord told her things he didn't tell us? There was something special there. There was something strong in her. Don't be sad. Listen to her." But the guys didn't want to listen. Moved on later in the centuries, and Mary represented the ability of women to preach, to establish churches. So if you want to get rid of the women and stop them from achieving any kind of notoriety and any kind of status in the church, get rid of their hero. So about the year 601, Pope Gregory I decided to say that Mary Magdalene was indeed a prostitute. There is no textual evidence whatsoever, no historical evidence, nothing to suggest that. It was simply a move against the women in the church. And it worked. So on Resurrection Day, not only was Jesus raised from the dead, but women were raised and elevated to positions that they had not previously enjoyed, at least not in living memory. Sure, Israel had accounted Miriam to be a prophet. Deborah was accounted to be a judge. So many great women in Israel's past. That had kind of disappeared to a large degree. Jesus resurrected the importance of women, gave them a new status to be the first ones to be the apostle of the risen Lord. In fact, if you remember correctly, the woman, the Samaritan woman at the well, was really the first apostle, the first one to be sent with the message from Jesus. So the first apostles, at least two of them, are women. Resurrection is for everyone. The status that women had enjoyed and lost was restored to them. The life of the Lord was asleep and then restored. We all got resurrected on Easter Sunday. We all were able to say, like Paul, I am risen with Christ. And thanks be to God for that.